We will not bow down. Let my people go. We will not bow down. Let my people go. We will not bow down. Let my people go.
So first of all, we welcome Heather McKee from the Academics for Academic Freedom, and specifically the founder of Student Academics for Academic Freedom. I'm sure many of you know that. So we'll talk a little bit about her organisation and where we go. So first of all, just give a round of applause for Heather for turning up. So Heather, thank you for coming along. I'll start with a few questions. So as an introduction, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to be involved in Academics for Academic Freedom?
Yep, so thanks Mike for having me along. So yes, I'm a student. I am Scottish, as you can hear, Glaswegian, although I don't live up there anymore. But I do study at the University of Glasgow. I'm studying a psychology degree, my master's at the moment. And over the last few years, I became increasingly frustrated at the lack of ability to say simple biological facts such as men can't be women, women can't be men, and you would think doing a psychology course you would be able to say these things. And then really what happened was I was on Twitter, because I have a bit of an addiction to Twitter, or X as it is now called, and I was discussing it with various other students doing psychology, and the frustrations kind of existed, were there for other people, and so so it was really what happened was it was born from my own frustration, speaking to other students. I was aware of Academics for Academic Freedom through X and what they were doing in terms of lecturers and professors and trying to get free speech back into campuses and universities. And I really reached out to them and I said, do you have a student body? Because I would like to become a member. And they said, well, we did on Facebook, but it never really took off because students, as you would expect, students do 3-4 years, leave, and that's exactly as it should be. And I said, well, I tell you what, I love a challenge. Let me have a bash. I will do it on X instead of Facebook because I don't use Facebook. And I'll see what I can do. I'll give it a try again. And I did. So that was May last year that we kicked that back off again.
Excellent. So thanks for that. So that's the student arm. What about the wider organisation, Academics for Academic Freedom? What do they do and what do they campaign about?
So that is a network of various academics at university up and down the country in the UK and in Ireland. It really was born from the kind of passion, if you like, from the late Roy Harris, who's the emeritus professor of general linguistics, can't even say the word, at Oxford. And Dennis Hayes, who's the director of AFAF. And, they came about really talking about at dinner how they were struggling as academics to have free speech and academic freedom. And that's where AFAF came to be, because it was born out of the Statement of Academic Freedom, which was developed by Dennis and by Roy. And that statement is available on the AFAF site. So that was launched December 2006. So it's been going for a wee while now, 2 decades. The BBC even covered it back in 2006, if you would believe that. They wouldn't do it now. Since launch, really, it has just generated a wealth of signatories. So I think there's 1,600 signatures on it now. And it's branched out into a network as well across universities. In 2022, the first network came to be, which was the University of Edinburgh network, and that was really from the drive and the passion of the women in that network who, through the trying to show the film Adult Human Female, and many of you will know the difficulties we had back then. So that network came, and then quickly after that it was University of Derby. And then from that now, the AFAF network is in 35 universities in the UK, one in Ireland and one in the US as well. And now we have the Student Academics for Academic Freedom, which is part of that network.
Excellent. So you've talked about what you do and some of what you focus on. What other areas of campaigning or focus that the organisation's got?
Yeah, so the key thing is like we have what we call the banned list, which is a good and a bad list of people who either will promote academic freedom, free speech, or the opposite of that. That's a really informative list to read about over the last few years, how we've gone from literally having maybe one or two a year to having many a year now in terms of what's in the banned list. Bridget Phillipson will probably be going on to the banned list tomorrow again. And yeah, we have things like the International Academic Freedom Day as well that we had last year. We have had the conference, the AFAF conference, which has now been 2 conferences, so we're getting the 3rd year on that. And we do various different things up and down the country for the network. So we do speaking events, debates. We are trying to launch some more student and academic debates this year, now that we've got SAFAF. And really it's just about promoting, principally to the academics and universities, to say, if you feel that free speech and academic freedom is important, which I would hope you would as an academic, please join up. And that's really what it is. It's about strength in numbers. Now we've got SAFAF on, it's about bringing together the academics and the students together.
You mentioned Bridget Phillipson going on the banned list. Now, I've only caught a headline today that said they were reversing tack on free speech legislation. I can't say I pretend to know any more than that. Why do you think she might be back on the banned list, or what does that mean? Yeah,
so the banned list is really, it has good people and bad people. So there's a couple of SAFAF members who are on it because they're trying to speak out in free speech. One of our members, Connie Shaw, at the moment is going through quite an interesting appeal with the Free Speech Union backing her up in order to try and appeal her suspension from Leeds Student Radio for having gender critical views. The opposite side to that banned list is you're not upholding free speech, and Bridget Phillipson today decided that the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Act will come into place, but a much more pared down version than what was supposed to come into place, which was last year, and which she put the kibosh on, paused. I think it was literally 6 days before it was due to be implemented. Now, this is an act that started life, and Dennis will kill me for I won't get the dates right, but it's been a few years in the making. It went through Parliament, it's been through 2 houses, it's back and forward debated, it got passed. So that's why it's called the Act 2023. It got paused when the Labour came to power. For various reasons, it would be too burdensome on universities, which is always quite funny. It wouldn't help the students, which again is quite funny. And obviously the Free Speech Union decided to take the government to court for a judicial review, which was due, and I think might still happen, on the 23rd of January, so I think it's coming up. Again, check the facts of the dates. My dates are not always the best. And she's brought it in, so she's agreed to bring it in, but she's taken the teeth completely out of the Act. What was supposed to be the tort, so again, that mechanism to get to take a university to court is gone. The areas around duties on student unions, gone. The complaints process, the Office of Students complaints process, will not be for students, it will only be for academics. So getting questioned, why is it Office for Students when it doesn't actually allow students to complain? We'll have to go through the whole process. So she's introducing it, which is good in some ways, but she's taken the real teeth out of the Act.
Right, thank you. So I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate here. At work, I must follow the company's policies on free speech and a whole host. As taxpayers, we pay for most of these academic institutions. They are not entirely, but effectively taxpayer funded. And no normal business would allow students to protest would allow customers to protest in their shop front. You couldn't go into Marks and Spencer's and protest and expect to be served still. So why shouldn't university bosses have some say over what the staff and students are able to say on campus? Why is a university different?
So, to play the devil's advocate here, I'm going to say that yes, they should have some responsibility of what happens on campus. So, and I'm saying happens here in terms of action. So, things that would put students into danger, for instance, for these, what we saw kind of last year, the year before, was the kind of campus encampments, if you like, and the discussions between Israel and Gaza. They absolutely should have a say on what happens on their campus when it relates to their students, absolutely, mainly from a safety point of view, like anybody who employs people, and I'm speaking again as universities employ many, many people. Students are not employees of a university. Again, students are paying customers of a university, so there's a difference there, So yes, there is, and absolutely they should have a say on what happens on their campus. In terms of what is said on campus, that's a different matter. That's where you should be able to say what you want to say. Free speech should allow that. Someone may be offended by what you say. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be allowed to say it. And this is where I think universities have lost their institutional neutrality, if they ever really had it. Some universities maybe more than others. I don't think it'll ever come in, because you've got some universities, Catholic-funded universities, for instance. You'll never get institutional neutrality with those universities. But the reality is, and we've gone from being, higher education was always about you going and opening your mind, learning your subject, but also opening your mind, getting different opinions thrown at you, challenges made. And also, the fact is, most students don't really care. And again, this comes down to the general public. Most people don't really care until it affects you. And this is why, you get, I always say the focal minority will be very loud on campus, because they will always stick together. Cliques and stuff like that will always come together. The vast majority of students just want to go and get their degree done, go down to the pub, be a student, and do their part-time jobs, whatever, and leave, and that's that, going into the workforce. What we're having to do is get these students, probably like myself actually, and like other members of SAFAF, to speak up. I don't necessarily want to be doing this. I'd love to not have to be doing this, but if I don't do it, who else will? If SAFAF members don't come together, who else will? So we have to be able to say, actually, there is some people that I might not agree with someone else in my university's view on Israel, for instance, but that doesn't mean they can't hold that view. It doesn't mean that I can't hold a different view to them. We should be all adult enough at university. When you go to university, you're an adult. You should be able to listen to different opinions and not cry that offence or that you hurt feelings. Because, sorry, if you feel that everything's going to hurt your feelings, then you are not suitable for university life.
No, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, so we've talked about quite a lot of the concerns for free speech generally at university. So I might just add to that slightly to say, obviously we had an election about 6 months ago now. How do you think, what are your concerns, but also maybe if you could touch on what do you think is different between the current administration, the current Labour government, from the previous Conservative government? Oh,
that's a good question, because I am what I would call a centrist in terms of politics, or politically homeless if you want these days. To give you a bit of an idea of my background, I grew up in the East End of Glasgow during the 80s and 90s, where everybody voted Labour. If you didn't vote Labour, there's something wrong with you. And nobody voted Tories. In Scotland didn't vote Tories. Maybe a few islands did, but nobody else. And Lib Dems, but that was about it. So I grew up in a not political family, which is quite interesting. My family couldn't have given two tosses about politics. As I grew up, Labour became lazy, in Scotland especially, and as a result of Labour becoming lazy, the SNP were managing to gain traction. Because what happens is, people don't vote in a new government because they want that government with that all these, nobody ever really reads a manifesto. Very rarely anyway. They vote in a new government because they don't like the old government. They want rid of the bads. They want, that doesn't work anymore. We want another one. So we're going to go the other way. And then, same in the US, same as it's here. It's two parties. We tend to go left or right. I would say the Conservatives weren't conservative, and that's why they lost a lot of the votes. I would say people turned away because they thought, well, I don't want that anymore. It's not great. The Conservatives were eating their own, to be honest. Let's face it, they were going through prime ministers quicker than hot dinners. So Labour got in. Now, Labour didn't get in with a massive, there were, as not many people voted. It was not the best. It wasn't. They keep saying a landslide, but a landslide of what, really? And they've come in, and Labour, and a lot of people are realising Labour aren't actually the Labour that they thought they were voting in. So again, I'm from a working class background. Labour was always put out there as the working class party. Labour hasn't been a party for the working class people, certainly not for women, in terms of working class women, for a very long time, probably from the Tony Blair world to New Labour. So what happens when you get two parties that are almost identical to each other? You're kind of stuck with, well, okay, we'll try the other one, because that's what's going to happen. We're sick of that one. We'll try Labour. What's interesting about right now is that we now have a potential third party, not the Lib Dems, because they're worse than they're lefter than Labour are. We've now got a third party potentially coming into the fore who might be a good challenger to both of those, and that's Reform. Now, I don't particularly like Nigel Farage. I'm sure he's fine, but I don't have a strong opinion about him. But there's an alternative choice being offered to the British public, which I think neither Labour or Conservatives quite gave it enough credit before Labour got into power. Now, Labour have done a shocking job in the last 6 months. They will blame the Conservatives for having to do that shocking job, but I think most of us don't agree with that, So I think the Labour Party have really lost the people that voted for them, and I would be amazed. I'd be amazed if Keir Starmer actually manages to maintain as Prime Minister for the next 4 years. To be honest, yeah, he might hold on in there, but there's no real alternative to him either in the Labour Party. They will do their 4 years because that's democracy and that's exactly what should happen. Who's the kind of key contender in the next general election? Now that's going to be an interesting one, and that's where I think it's all we play for. So I think the problem is Conservatives were no longer representing who they should have been representing. Labour came into power, and actually most people have realised Labour don't represent who they should be representing either.
No, very much so. I'm going to commend myself, which I probably shouldn't do in one of these, but I managed not to grab the glass the moment you mentioned you were from the east end of Glasgow. It was a temptation. I have worked up there a lot, but anyhow, thank you. Okay, thanks for all of those points. So I guess you've talked about what the organisation is and what you're doing, and how can people support or get involved in the group? You might know not everyone here is perhaps of student age. I know students can be any age, but we're not. So how can people maybe get involved and support the organisation?
So if you're on Twitter or Instagram or LinkedIn, give us a follow. We're not on Facebook because I can't do another social media site. It would just be too much. Give us a follow, share us out, tweet the stuff that we tweet. If you know students, tell them to come along and speak to us. Give us a shout. As I say, we're non-partisan, so my political views have been politically homeless. We have members who are Conservative-minded and Labour left-leaning voters as well. So, we don't really care what your politics is. We're only interested in if you're interested in free speech. So share out as much, speak about us. We are hopeful, and we did raise a challenge at the last conference in November last year, that we want at least one student member in every university in the UK and Ireland. We're doing all right. We're kind of getting there gradually, slowly. Still got a way to go. But, from where we started in May last year, we are now over 2,000 followers on Twitter, which is pretty good going for a student organisation. And we're in double figures for members of students. So there is a first for free speech and academic freedom on campus. I think a lot of students are now waking up to the fact that the opinion they may have today, which is acceptable and fits in with the norm, might not be an acceptable opinion in 5 years' time, for instance. So it's trying to say to people that, you know, I mean, I never thought I'd be reading, I'm reading 1984, and I never thought I'd be reading that thinking, living it right now, you know, the thought of not being able to speak in pubs, for instance, because one of the bartenders might not like your opinion, is absolutely terrifying to me. And the fact that this is coming from a Labour government is probably even more terrifying. You know, the fact that free speech has been shut down in almost every part of our lives, not just universities, which is obviously our focus, but the fact that you can't go down, I mean, the thing, doing this, like this type of thing, you know, I mean, we need to be really careful that it doesn't go that way. You know, the fact that the Labour government don't like, you know, the fact that the X is become this branded, this far-right hated thing, it's because it's showing up to a lot of people that the Labour government have a real problem with free speech. And love or hate Elon Musk, again, I don't really care, he's a billionaire, he can do what he's like. You can choose to mute him, you can choose to block him, you don't have to listen to people. That's the key thing about free speech and freedom of choice. You don't have to listen to anybody you don't want to listen to. I would recommend you do listen to differences of opinion, because diversity of thought is exactly what we want, especially at university. Unfortunately, I feel like we're heading down the Ministry of Truth path at the moment, which is a bit of a worry. Yeah, so I mean, I would just say, please just support as much as you can. If you know students, if you know grandkids, kids, uni, whatever, just tell them to give us a follow, tell them to drop me a line. We're happy to take anybody in. It all comes down to strength in numbers. The key bit for AFAF, having the student body now, the student arm, is it's academics and students coming together and showing that debate can happen and that people don't die from hurt feelings, and that's what we need to get back to. So yeah, just listen, just keep sharing everything. That's all we can ask.
Fantastic. Heather, thank you very much for your thoughts. Everyone give Heather a round of applause.